evening. Tom Brady is the best quarterback of all time. No need to respond, but
we knew that before
here
the Super Bowl.
With the past two champions of our fantasy football league, Andrew Trebbing and Dane Thomas. So Dane came on. He's going to be our first special guest. We're just going to go through a couple things, hear him speak. Maybe you'll find out some ideas on how to make trade offers towards him or certain things that highlight you winning a championship, maybe like one of these two have done. By the way, I won the
Include Joshua Kelly in every trade proposal to Dane. That's how you want to trade with Dane.
Oh my God, Candy, you do realize that one of your stud running backs now has Anthony Lynn as his offensive coordinator. So I just want to say good luck with that, because the first time he fumbles, it's going to be Adrian Peterson all day for the rest of the year.
I'm totally fine with that. I still have Adrian Peterson on my team.
Adrian Peterson is somebody that I would definitely handcuff if you had DeAndre Swift at this point, because it's not going to be pretty. Anthony Lynn's a terrible coach.
So we just watched the Super Bowl. Obviously, we can talk about how terrible view of like viewers chiming in, watching, and at the same time, the worst halftime show we've ever seen in our whole entire lives.
I love the halftime show. I love the weekend. I thought that was great. Came out today. I don't know if you guys saw it. Lowest rated Super Bowl, lowest viewership of all time.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
I thought it was an interesting choice of a Super Bowl halftime because he is so like he's pretty popular right now, but compared to the other acts that they've had, like for example, last year was J-Lo and Shakira, right? They each have like 60 million records sold. Like the Weeknd has like 6 million records sold. So like and they had to share the stage.
Yeah, but I mean I would contend that he's more popular right now than either one of those two, you know.
Not in their prime though. Maybe
they're not in their prime.
I guess. I don't know. To me it's more like a legacy act. Like
it's not for me though. I feel like a lot of those legacy acts are terrible.
I think it tells us a lot about the Super Bowl when the first thing we're excited to talk about is the halftime show.
It was a terrible game. It was a terrible game, and I don't want to hear anything about good defense or, you know what? I'm done talking about the game. I'm out. I don't want to talk about it. You guys don't talk about it.
Hey, Devin White basically took Joshua Kelly's job, and then he shut down Patrick Mahomes, too. That's how good Devin White is. He can stop Josh Kelly and Patrick Mahomes for an entire season.
That defense is so stacked.
It's ridiculous.
I mean,
and
Shaquille Barrett, Sue, and their inside linebackers they're probably two of the top 5, top 10 inside linebackers in the league.
It's definitely an effect of the O-line having to go to the backups, right? Like that, it just goes to show. That's what it came down to.
They're still professionals, and like they got that. I mean, they're still professionals, and that offensive line, like they had 5 guys, they rushed 4. I mean, you're still up a guy. Like you got to be able to block somebody, and they couldn't block anybody.
They weren't even blitzing that much, right? They were just sending 4 most of the time.
They only blitzed. Was it like 10% of the time?
And they had 2 deep, like 90% of plays or something.
Yeah, but you can double team one D end or inside, but you can't double both D ends if they're coming hard off the back. If they're coming hard off the corners and they have 2 backup tackles in, that's a hard pickup unless you're leaving 2 backs in the backfield, which is just not their offense.
I agree with that, but at the same token, I've never seen someone get that much pressure with literally rushing just your front 4. Like that front 4 played amazing, and I don't think that even if they had their whole offensive line there, like you look like Vita Vea and Ndamukong Suh, like these guys are a pro. Jason Pierre-Paul, it's just like you could have had the Pittsburgh Steelers offensive line from the 70s, like reincarnated in there trying to block those guys. I just don't think it was happening. Like
I agree.
I'm not so much disruption.
I'm not disagreeing. I don't think that the Chiefs did them any favors either, or did themselves any favors, because they didn't adjust their game plan accordingly. They didn't go to short passing. Patrick Mahomes had the ball in his hand for more than 3 seconds all the way to the end of the game. I said to my dad at some point, I was like, Patrick Mahomes somehow also caught PMS. The whole stat that came out today, the whole 497 yards, you don't want to be doing that. I get it. You're Patrick Mahomes. Throw the ball. Like hit your hot route. Like call an audible. Like they held the ball way too long. Like on
what was
this? What
was the 497 stat you're talking about?
He had the opportunity to throw the ball and he chose not to.
How about running the ball? I mean, that game their defensive scheme reminded me a lot of the Buffalo game from, I think, was like week 11 or week 12 in the regular season, where Buffalo said, we're not going to get beat deep by Tyreek Hill, and we're not going to get beat over the middle by Travis Kelce. You're gonna prove you can run the ball. And the Chiefs ran the ball right down their throat and beat the crap out of the Bills. And the few handoffs that Clyde Edwards-Helaire did have in the Super Bowl, like, he looked good, but for whatever reason, like, they weren't down that much where they could abandon the run game. Like, at the end of the game, obviously they had to, but there was so much time left in that game, and they just refused to run the ball. And it's just like, okay, look, they're giving you the run. Just take it. Like, keep the game close. Like, don't let this get out of hand. They were just like, like, screw it. Like, we're going to play the way we want to play. And it cost them. Like, you can't do
I think
that.
when you're short your best, smart. I think when you're short your best offensive lineman, and then, like you guys have said, they were rushing 4 and getting pressure. And it's not, with that team, it's not just from the DN positions. And Ndamukong Suh is, I think Ndamukong Suh is probably, I know it's ridiculous to say he's underrated, but he's so underrated now. Like, the fact that they got him for such a cheap deal, it's hard to run. It's hard to run when you're down your best tackle and they're gutting you on the inside. So I agree with you. They should have run the ball more. They should have taken a lot of faster routes, and they didn't do either one of those things. That's why they looked like a joke of a team. Like, it was so weird.
They didn't even try. That's the thing. No. It's just like, okay, they're playing 2 deep safeties, and you're just chucking the ball deep, like, hoping for the best. Like, just don't do that. Like, it's just like, why? Like, I
don't know. It reminded me. I know it's weird because it's Tom Brady's last win. It reminded me of when the Rams got to the Super Bowl by this amazing play action offense, and then they got to the Super Bowl, and they're like, "Yeah, no more play action. Like, we don't want to do that anymore. We want to do something new." And it made no sense.
I think we can't, make of more importance in the Super Bowl 2 things, right? The fact that Tampa was at home in their own stadium. When you try to treat the Super Bowl as like a normal week compared to anything else, the surroundings, to be within your own facility and that, area for the game, I think that's a huge advantage for Tampa as well. And just the second thing is, they played the Chiefs earlier this year. It was the last time the Bucs lost to the Chiefs prior to the Super Bowl. So having that game advantage, seeing their script as far as when they played, and kudos for Tampa Bay making the adjustments the second time around. And, as much as I think Eric Bieniemy is a great coach, and there's a lot of great people on that coaching staff overall, I am shocked they didn't make mid-game adjustments.
That play calling was terrible offensively. Like, all the Bieniemy talk previously, I loved. Offensive play calling was garbage in the Super Bowl.
I will say one thing, and I really do hope that the little girl comes out of it, but obviously everyone knows, like, the tragic news that happened. I can't see a scenario where Andy Reid was 100% there that game. Like,
yeah,
when something like that happens, your mind just has to, be with everything that happened. Like, it's obviously a horrible situation to happen, and it's just.
What's kind of crazy is a lot of times in the Super Bowl, like, there are, we don't do it often enough, but there's a lot of outside factors. And I think Ross touched on a little bit with the home field. I don't think there's that big a home field advantage, but it's a little bit. And then you take into account the injuries. All of the Tampa Bay injuries came back clean. All their guys got to play. The Chiefs didn't. Patrick Mahomes is going in for surgery on that toe. The car accident was horrible. The barber that had COVID, they all had to be in hardcore COVID protocol. Like, those are a lot of negative factors going into something where you got to have your head on totally right. And I think it was pretty clear early on that the Chiefs didn't have their heads on right. And it's like, you can be like outside factors. You should try to isolate those things, but it just sucks because it clearly, I think a combination of multiple things had a severely negative effect on that team. And I totally agree. Car accident was a big one.
And the refs, they actually made the calls. They got paid off at a cheap rate to be able to make
Okay, do you want to hear the thing I heard today, which is the new this is the big conspiracy coming out? I don't know if anybody else has heard this. So the one referee has a son named Brady, named after Tom Brady. Had him after the Patriots' second Super Bowl. Had a son, his name is Brady, and was in that Super Bowl. Conspiracy?
I hope he's reffing the next year's Super Bowl.
So it actually, I wasn't going to bring it up, but it brings up Jim's sexism that it was actually the female that has the son. Jim assumed it was a man.
Oh, is it her? Is it her?
Yeah, it was.
Okay, I thought you said a man. Sorry.
No, I didn't. I'm just joking. It is true, but it was. They have a son named Brady, named after Tom Brady. Now, this is all rumors. This is a supposed. His name is Brady, but people are saying they are from Boston. He was born after the Patriots won their second Super Bowl, I think it was, and he was named after Tom Brady.
So is it like, another bastard child, or like?
No, but apparently they're big Patriots fans.
Oh.
And I think it's tough because I think all referees, try to do their best. And I think they do have fans. I mean, they're football fans, right? So that's why they're becoming football referees. But it's tough because it's you got to just assume they're unbiased. And I think whenever you have a bad game, like all those refs did a horseshit job in the first half. They were terrible, like terrible calls. So you're always looking for excuses here and there. And it is I don't think it's coincidental that Tom Brady gets a ton of the calls. I think he's the face of the NFL, the most popular or not popular, divisive player. So it's like he is going to get a lot of the calls.
He's the best
all
leader.
Quarterbacks do, Yeah, I mean, Patrick Mahomes gets a lot of the calls too. It's just that when he's in a game against Tom Brady, he doesn't get the calls Tom does. Yeah.
But then the big standouts from the game obviously has to be tight end. When you have Gronk and Kelsey in that game, you look at Gronk still dominating, right? Even though he looks slow as shit, but still tight ends being very significant. That's what opened up the game plan. And then you also have, heading into this next year for fantasy, we have tight ends. I'm trying to make trades to get a tight end, guys. I need help. I'm willing to deal. Somebody come work with me at some point. But it's starting to dry up, guys. It's going to be hard to find some of these tight ends. I think Dane, you kind of want to talk on this a little bit, right?
I do, actually. And when you go and you actually look at tight ends, if you look at any of the other categories, like let's just take running back, for instance. So this year you had 3 running backs basically like dominate. You had Alvin Kamara with 20 touchdowns. You had Derrick Henry run for 2,000 yards and 17 touchdowns. And you had Dalvin Cook go for over 100 yards a game and 17 touchdowns. Adding to the fact, Christian McCaffrey's hurt. Saquon Barkley's hurt. Like, those guys are legit studs. Nick Chubb missed basically 5 games. Like, he missed 4 games, and then the game he was injured in, he still had 1,000 yards and 12 touchdowns. There are a lot of just like stud running backs. And even after that, like Jonathan Taylor, he really didn't come on until the second half of the season. You can go 10 deep and say, like, legitimately every year you could possibly have the best running back. Wide receiver, quite the same way. Yeah, Devontae Adams had, 18 touchdowns? That's absurd.
I'm absurd amount.
And missing games, too.
And missed games, and Tyreek Hills, and Stephon Diggs. And, like, you even go down the list and, DK Metcalf was 6th, but his teammate Tyler Lockett was 9th. Like, there's so many good receivers out there, like Justin Jefferson, like he was 7th. Adam Thielen was still technically a wide receiver 1. Like,
I'm still waiting for you to say DeAndre Hopkins, who in my opinion is the best player and the best receiver in the league.
And I would agree with you. I think DeAndre Hopkins is the best. But he fell off a cliff at the end of the year, mostly because Kyler Murray was hurt. But he still ended up being 5th. Yeah, he still ended up being 5th. Now, you go to tight end, and it's just like, it's eye-opening because you have all these guys that you would want from top to bottom, like, wide receiver 1 to wide receiver 12, like, overall in points. They're still technically what you would consider, like, wide receiver 1s for a team. There's not a guy on that list that I'd go, yeah, I don't really want. Like, I want them all. Running backs, like I said, there's going to be next year 7 or 8 guys that could potentially, like, eclipse 300 points if they stay healthy. But, like, tight end, Travis Kelce scored 260.26 points. Now,
it was insane this year.
That's insane. If he actually goes into the receiver class, he's the number 4 wide receiver, let alone tight end. The next guy on the list, Darren Waller at 227.1, which for a tight end, still, Darren Waller had an amazing year. George Kittle scored 100 points in about 5 games. George Kittle might actually still be the best tight end, but do you know who number 3 is? How about number 4? Number 3 was Robert Tonyan. Now, Robert Tonyan scored 150.6 points. That's still 110 less than Travis Kelce. Now, it's not as much like, if you go and you look at the points, I'm not looking at the points. I'm looking at, like, what the percentage is. So you have a guy who scored 150. He scored 60% of the number one guy, and he's the number 3 guy overall. The difference between Adams and Stephon Diggs is not nearly that big a gap. If you go Kelsey to the next guy down, which is funny because Ross said, like, hey, recently he was just like, after Kelsey, you're kind of light on tight end. And I was like, dude, you really should take a look at this. I had Logan Thomas. Logan Thomas was the 4th overall tight end in the league. Who the hell is going to draft Logan Thomas next year? Nobody. He's the number 4 tight end, and he might not even get drafted. He's or would you feel happy drafting that? That's crap.
No, nobody wants to draft Logan Thomas.
And you go all the way down to what would be, if you wanted to say the top 12 guys are, the top 12 guys points wise are, tight end ones. Noah Fant is the 12th guy on the list, had 118.3 points. 118 to 260. I mean, Travis Kelsey literally doubled him and then halved it on top of him. Like, he
might be a first-round pick in redrafts next year, I think. He's at, like, Jimmy Graham status when he was at the top of his game.
Or like the Gronk status, or even like
or Gronk, yeah.
Like, Travis Kelsey would make the argument that you could take him probably 4th through 6th, and I wouldn't even bat an eye. Like, it is such a luxury, like, to have a guy that goes out there every game at a position, and you get a 15 to 20 out of him when everyone else is fighting to get
9 receptions, 100 yards, probably a touchdown. That's what you're looking at from him.
And you're telling me that there's guys that are considered tight end ones, and you're hoping to get 8 from them? Like, dude, like, there's like. It's just such a disparity, and it's I mean, I love Mike Gesicki, but like every week I'm crossing my fingers and hope he gets me 8 points. Like,
I believe my prediction is he would be tight end number 1. Thank you very much.
Well, I mean, I think
it did not pan out. Just
right, but I mean, like, this is the guy that you draft in like the 8th or 9th round. You're like, all right, like I got a top tier tight end, and it's just like, dude, if you match him up against Kelsey, you're going to get smoked. Like,
or how about Mark Andrews, who was like the bell of the ball last year. People in drafts were taking him super early this year, and I mean, was he even top 10? Like, he fell off a cliff.
No, he was still top 10, but like,
but not where he was expected.
No, not where. Yeah. And it's just like, Robert Tonyan was 3rd, and he had 150 points. Like, that's not even 10 points a game, and you're the 3rd guy, and you can't even average 10 points a game. Like, the elite status of tight ends, there's 3 guys. There's 3 guys, and then there's just a load of crap. And this brings me to my next point. Kyle Pitts is coming. Now,
nobody draft him.
Kyle, if you watch Kyle Pitts play, you look at him and go, like, that guy is just so much better than everyone else on the field. And he's a tight end. He can run like a deer. He can catch. He can jump over people. Like, I thought Kyle Trask was terrible. But you look at someone like this coming, and you have a draft class that, I mean, there's top-end
talent. There's 4 really good guys, I think.
I would say 5.
And, if you include Pitts as your 5th. Unless you have...
I have 3 receivers, 2 running backs.
Okay, all right, fair enough.
But in a scenario where, like, Jim has the 3rd pick, like, do you really want? I mean, it's a luxury to have Jamar Chase, but at this point, like, it's going to put someone else on your bench where you could have, instead of having that, like, where like you have this extra bench help, you could just have a premium guy potentially, like a stud at a position where just no one has it.
And he's like 22 years old, or 23, however young he is. Yeah.
Okay.
But then you got to sit on a tight end for a couple of years for them to develop in the NFL.
Okay.
It's also a similar story. This is a similar story. This happens occasionally, like with tight ends. It's hard to predict tight ends. It doesn't matter how good they looked in college. It's hard to predict tight ends.
He could be the next David Njoku.
I was going to say the O.J. Howard, David Njoku,
right?
Evan Engram class.
He could, or he could be the piece that puts you over the top. Look at the last 2 winners, me and Trebbing. Trebbing, who'd you have as tight end this year? Mr.
Darren Waller.
The second best tight end. Who did I have? Travis Kelce, the number one.
Yep.
Well, they're probably going to be 1, 2, and 3 with Kittle thrown in there. And the other team that everyone talks about as being one of the best teams in Shane's team, he has George Kittle. I mean, it's no surprise that you got the 2 previous winners and the guy that's like probably has the best overall team, if not for like some injury slip-ups. Like, we all have these amazing top flight tight ends that it's such an advantage to have one. I mean, it's literally a luxury. Like, you can find a running back, you can find a wide receiver, you can't find a tight end.
I expect in fantasy to be struggling without a tight end. And then when you actually do have one, it just feels like you're on easy mode.
Oh my God. Every week when I put Travis Kelce's name in, I just giggle to myself and I'm just like, it doesn't matter what you have in other positions. I'm just going to triple you up in one spot. And it's just,
And he just signed another contract to be there for another 2 or 3 years with Patrick Mahomes throwing to him. So,
Trev, how did you feel every time you looked down and saw Darren Waller threw up 30? Like, you just you can't lose. You just can't lose. Like,
it is a good feeling, especially because I didn't put any draft capital. I just happened to get him off of free agency, which was total skill, not lucky at all. Just I totally knew he was going to pan out. But it's kind of interesting because, I mean, Kelsey's always been the top and Kittle's been there, but it didn't. After that, it seemed like for a while it was a mix of guys. Like, there were times where Kyle Rudolph was like, okay, like, I'm happy to start Kyle Rudolph, and then now he's there like, all right, he'll get like a catch, and if he gets a touchdown, then I'm okay. And there's a few guys that I think will probably start stepping towards that top 3, but I don't think anyone's going to crack that top 3 for a year or two.
Next year, Dallas Goedert, Dan.
Goddard's one of them just because Ertz isn't going to be there next year. And Ertz is another one that fell off when they drafted Goddard because now they have 2 tight ends. But I think Hawkinson could end up there. I guess Jared Goff's throwing to him now, so that kind of changes the equation a little bit. Hunter Henry was another one.
Worse.
It's got to be worse, right? Like, but I don't know.
If you want a sleeper tight end, I would go with the name escaped. Who's the Dallas tight end? It's
Dalton Schultz.
Jarwin. Jarwin's the one that got paid.
Yeah, but Schultz is the one who got all the targets.
Schultz is the one who got all the targets
because Jarwin was hurt.
Yeah, I guess that's true.
I would look towards Dallas because, I mean,
they love their tight ends.
If Dak Prescott doesn't get hurt, he might have actually thrown for 6,000 yards. I'm not saying he's good and he's going to win football games. Like, you don't win by just chucking the ball all over the place, but you win fantasy football games that way. And I mean, if you're going to get a piece of that action where like you have they're just going to chuck the ball down the field and like try and win games 45-42, maybe you look towards that as like trying to get one of those pieces. Now, I completely forgot about Blake Jarwin. But if you knew who the number 1 tight end was in Dallas, I might look to that.
As long as they can define number 1.
That might be that next guy that takes the step and goes to like, the elite status out of nowhere, and people will be like, oh, like where'd that come from? It's like, well, when Dak Prescott doesn't basically lose his leg and he's there for the whole year and he's throwing the ball 75 times a game, I mean, who cares? Dallas is still going to lose, but you're going to win in fantasy. It's like a win-win situation. You get to see the Cowboys lose and your team wins.
Dan, how about Dallas's cap situation?
It's not that bad. Because they're going to tag him again. They're going to tag Dak. They're way far apart. So they're going to tag him again. And there's some guys they got to rework, but they're actually not that bad. They got the space to sign. Think about it. They got the space to sign a $40 million minimum. So they're not that bad.
They need to get rid of Amari Cooper.
Say again?
Which one? Could they need to get rid of Amari Cooper? I said, could they sign Hunter Henry?
Yeah, they could. I mean, they could, but the problem is they paid Blake Jarwin last year. Like, he's on one of their bigger not one of their bigger contracts, but like one of their overpay contracts is Blake Jarwin. Like, he's getting top tight end money. So, like, maybe not top tight end money, but like that second tier. So that's their guy. Like, once they pay somebody, like, they stick with it to some degree. So they're not gonna sign a free agent tight end. They're not gonna. They've got 3 on roster. They're going to stick with those 3.
Okay.
They might draft one. If they draft one, it's something to look out for, but they'll draft them late like they did Dalton Schultz, and hopefully it'll work out. But Blake Jarwin injured last year. They paid him and he got injured. They don't know what they're going to get out of him. So he would be somebody to look at as a sleeper, like when he's back and you're getting a full season. It's the first full season they're going to get out of him. So
what do you think? I just don't like Amari Cooper. I don't think he's a good football player. If you look at his stats, he'll have like 3 to 4 games where he just explodes, and the rest of the year he is just very pedestrian. And you're paying him all that money with the emergence of CeeDee Lamb and having Michael Gallup as a good number 2. I think you could just move off of Amari Cooper, free up more money, pay Dak, possibly get some help on the defense. Go get another lineman to like rebuild that line, and I think you could be better just by getting rid of Amari Cooper.
Yeah, so
I
don't like love Amari Cooper. My dad is very much of that belief, Dane, that he disappears in a lot of games. I agree. The problem is they experimented with not having a number 1 receiver. It did not go well. That whole by committee thing doesn't work in that offense. For better or worse, he's a number 1. He's a hard one, like size, separation. He gets the best. If you look at some of the underlying stats, he's one of the best separation receivers in the NFL, one of the best route runners. So you do still have to put your number 1 cornerback on him. I am not sold on CeeDee Lamb. I want to see more out of him. I do like Michael Gallup a lot. I think it's a shame they might lose him. He was in a contract year. I almost think that with how badly they did, it might have hurt his stock a bit. So they might now be able to re-sign him, but probably not afford him. There are a lot of guys that they need to rework. And I think Amari Cooper could stand to rework. The problem is his stats are misleading. Like you said, he has a couple games where he's massive and a couple games where he's nothing. But his stats, if you're paying, and a lot of players are just going to point to their stat line, if you're paying him on his stats, he doesn't really need to rework. Now, I'm not familiar enough with the dead cap space. I know his contract was front loaded because they took it on, they signed it like right after he came over. But, I'm not sold on the rest of the receiving core right now, so like I wouldn't want to move on from him yet. But from a fantasy perspective, I'm definitely not a fan of him because you're playing with that quote unquote landmine player where you don't know what you're going to get out of him week to week.
He reminds me of a player that was like the exact same way. If obviously everyone remembers Doug Baldwin, and I remember one year someone saying, Doug Baldwin's a wide receiver 1, and I went back and looked. Doug Baldwin had 10 touchdowns, but he scored them in 4 games. And I'm just like, well, what the hell does he do the other 12? Like, you need consistency. Like, okay, yeah, he helped me win 4 weeks, but like if those 4 weeks aren't weeks to get into the playoffs or in the playoffs themselves, he literally did nothing. And I think Amari Cooper's way too much like that, where like you'll get this game where he's 11 for 250 and 3 touchdowns, or he just has like this monster game. And then you have a game where they go and they play the New York Jets and he gets 1 for 3, and I literally lose hundreds of dollars playing DFS, and I want to punch through my television screen watching. I'm like, you're playing the New York Jets and you go 1 for 3. That's your stat line. Like, I could do that, and you're making $25 million a year. Like, come on, man. Like, you're not good.
I think he's one of those receivers too, where this is an underrated thing in my opinion, is the receiver who is great against anything other than top flight competition or high to top like cornerback play, and then like when you play against somebody really good, you disappear. Like, that's not a rarity. That's actually becoming more and more common, where some receivers are awesome if they're on a guy who is smaller and slower than them, like shocker. But then they get up and they play Stephon Gilmore, Jalen Ramsey. The Jets have a underrated secondary where all of a sudden they disappear. Like, they get covered up by 1 to 2 guys. So it happens. Go ask Tyreek Hill how it happened, how it feels to have somebody over the top on you on every play. So I think if the emergence of CeeDee Lamb is real, it could actually help out. What are you guys laughing at?
I was given the peace sign to Tyreek.
My screen. It'll be interesting. Like, their receiving core is very much in flux. I wouldn't want anything to do with any one of the 3 of them next year. CeeDee Lamb probably the most, just because the most potential is there. But I don't like CD. I think CD's soft. I think he showed a lot of negative behaviors in his first year. I think he showed a lot of positives too, but I think there's a lot of questions on all three of those guys. So I don't think it's just Amari Cooper. For how good their receiving core is, it's also got a lot of questions.
I just hate Amari Cooper. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I mean, you tell.
I've put so much stock into him and been burned so many times where I'm just like, dude, like I can't.
Fantasy.
Yeah.
I'm just done with him. I don't care.
He's not a fantasy horse. I think everyone wants him to be a fantasy, stud, and it's just not his type of game. Like, I don't think it makes him a bad football player, but he's definitely not a fantasy stud.
Some games he is.
Well, the numbers are there at the end of the year. They're just not consistent. Like I said,
and it's like that every year too.
I can't take a 40 from you one week and then have a 5 out of you for the next 3. Like it's just.
But if I'm a football team and he's dominant, unless you put on 2 guys, I still like him from a football coach perspective. That's what I'm saying.
That's a fair point.
Also, the craziest thing for me about Amari Cooper is he's 26. He's been in the league for like 40 years. He's 26 years old. So like he has like, he's got probably 6 or 7 more years of like, a wide receiver one.
He's a 15 draft pick, right? 2015.
I think so. Yeah.
God.
You think he was?
I guess when he was 19 or 20.
He was only on the Raiders for like 2 years.
Trade him to the Eagles or the Patriots, where receivers go to die.
Oh yeah, he will. He will die on the Eagles. That's for sure.
So we have this upcoming year. We have 11 weeks until the NFL draft. So and then we'll have a rookie draft shortly after that. Everybody's got team needs heading into this season. What are every one of us, we're going to go through what are our top 2 needs heading into so that maybe people want to reach out and try and spark some trade conversations. I'll just start with me. I'm looking for a tight end and a backup QB. Those are my 2 high priorities. I won't go into much detail, but maybe you guys give a little more context on how you're looking to deal for those pieces. Just something to spark some trades. Ross, what are your 2 key needs?
I would say a second tight end. With Jimmy Graham being grandpa and possibly being cut out of Chicago and Noah Fant as the only other tight end on my roster, I could use a second tight end. And then I need a third running back that I could rely on as well. I'd say are my top 2 needs, especially with the investment in receiver I made last year. So that's why I would say the top 2 needs I have are.
What are you looking to deal away?
1.6 is on the table. We talked about Kyle Pitts earlier before. It's a sweet spot, I think, for where Pitt could possibly fall in this draft if if the right opportunity comes out there. Betancourt, if Alvin Kamara is on the table, I'd be willing to talk. Whatever that opportunity that's out there, I think I'd be willing to pair one of my young receivers to possibly get that other piece along with my draft pick. There's definitely opportunity out there for sure.
So obviously all of us are trying to trade for Alvin Kamara from Daniel Betancourt. Everybody wants them. So Trev, what are you offering to Betancourt to get Kamara?
I wanted Kamara last year. I don't want him as much this year.
So Drew Brees retires. Have fun with him.
Yeah, and Drew Brees for sure is retiring. I know it just came out today. I mean, we already knew he was retiring, but I think it came out today or yesterday that he reworked his contract to be a veteran minimum for next year because he's still under contract. So he reworked it and freed up like 12 or 15 million in cap space for the Saints,
which is a class move, just like on a class career. So,
yeah. For me, I, as the champion of the league, I am ready to sell everything I have except for Justin Jefferson. I'm in a weird spot where I have a lot of guys that are kind of unknown going into the season. Allen Robinson's going to be on a different team. Aaron Jones, who was like a key piece on my team, is an unknown. Joe Mixon was hurt all year. I don't even know what to expect out of him. And then guys like Robert Woods, I don't know. He's a year older. He's a wide receiver 1 or close to it almost every single year. But you wonder when the ball is going to drop on that. So I'm looking to get younger. I'm willing to move some receivers for sure. I have a good stock hold on receivers. I'd like to get a young running back. Other than that, I'm willing to make some moves. Darren Waller is the one piece that I'm kind of, and Justin Jefferson are like the 2 pieces that I'm kind of stuck on, probably holding on to. But I think I'm willing to move kind of everything else around. And I got some quarterbacks too. I have a couple quarterbacks that are probably going to be pretty decent next year. So,
Dan,
we'll see.
Dan, what are you looking for? What are your two key pieces?
I got to shore up my defense, but that's not really. No one ever has the same opinion on defensive players to trade, so it's impossible. That's it. I'm good.
You need defense.
I do, but every time I try to trade defense, it's very hard to, like we've talked about this in the past, it's very hard to have a similar opinion on what defensive players are worth. So I'll probably acknowledge that in the draft. I'd still like another receiver because I don't know what Will Fuller's going to do, but I mean, I also don't have the draft capital to trade, so it's kind of hard, to make it.
Fuller's a free agent, right?
What's up?
Will Fuller's a free agent?
Yeah. My guess is that if Deshaun leaves, he might leave, but if he could stay because they could pay him a bunch. It would be rare for a team to let their best receiver go and then let go of their next best receiver that replaced that guy the next year. But it's the Texans, so they might do that.
And then Dane, what are your two key spots?
Well, I will say the same thing. I actually want some more consistency out of my defense, but honestly, if just the injuries could stay away, like please, dear God, everyone has injuries, but for whatever reason, my defense every year just gets hurt, and it's just like I had Keanu Neal, and every year Keanu Neal, like he starts out like as a stud, and then he just gets hurt by week 4. So obviously this year, the year that he plays every game, Landon Collins gets hurt like week 4, and I'm just like, great, like shoot me. Like I thought I had a stud linebacker in Leighton Vander Esch, and when he plays, he's great, but he just doesn't play enough. And I would really like to shore up probably the defensive end. And then obviously the one glaring need is, when I'm starting Mitchell Trubisky in the playoffs, there's something went horribly wrong. Horribly wrong. Like you shouldn't score the second most points in the entire league and have Mitchell Trubisky as your quarterback. Like,
listen, he says that, but he beat me on points on Mitch Trubisky versus Patrick Mahomes in that matchup.
I also beat you the previous year. Ryan Fitzpatrick outscored Patrick Mahomes. So
good times.
Could you imagine if Carson Wentz actually just didn't suck?
Yeah.
I mean, I tried. I thought I had a good combination in Carson Wentz and Matt Ryan, and it's just every week I play them, and I'm like, okay, like you're at home playing some like schmo team because like your team's bad too. So like, okay, you get the Lions at home, and like they go out and get like a 4, and I'm just like, okay, like it's. And Wentz, I can see because like they were just decimated by injuries. But like, what's Matt Ryan's excuse? Like, dude, you had Julio Jones and you had.
I think his career since that
he's old.
You have Calvin Ridley,
yeah.
And it's just like I shouldn't play you and get a 4 out of you. Like you have 2 of the best wide receivers in the entire NFL in a throwing league, and
Todd Gurley too, right?
Yeah. Well,
even got a dump up target.
Even still, but like. If it wasn't for some garbage time, some of his games would have been really bad. Like Matt Ryan, he went from, in my mind, like Hall of Fame quarterback to blowing a 28-3 lead that now he's just in the dumpster. Like that loss set him on a downward spiral, which I don't think he's ever going to recover. Like it killed his career.
He'll be the next Phillip Rivers, where like he'll be in that conversation of best quarterbacks to never win it. But it's like, are they a Hall of Famer? Probably not. Like,
but Phillip Rivers, like at least still, he didn't win it, but he still put up decent numbers.
The overall stats that's going to put him in the Hall of Fame.
But I mean, Matt Ryan was on pace for like legendary. Like if you look at his stats, Matt Ryan was on a pace to basically break the all-time passing like records. He was just every year was just like, okay, I'm going to throw for 4,500 yards and I'm going to throw for 35 to 40 touchdowns. And then all of a sudden, like the man's arm just fell off. I don't know, like what the hell is going on there? And it's he probably has the best weapons he's ever had in his life, and he looked so bad. Like he did not age well. He needs to go eat avocado ice cream and like bang a supermodel or something. I don't know, but like, dude, like.
Speaking of quarterbacks
he fell apart.
falling off, it's finally nice to see Breeze catch up to the retirement after his arm retired 2 years ago. So like that's a positive thing for us. But also we have Wentz. Wentz is becoming all of the talk about where is Wentz going? Is he garbage? Is he actually good? I know we touched on this briefly, but I mean, Ross, it looks like he's going to be your quarterback. Welcome to hell, buddy.
Please, for the love of God, no. Please, for the love of God.
Breaking news. Breaking news. Ross, get fucked. It's not actually.
I would rather trade up for Trey Lance or Justin Fields than take Carson Wentz.
I agree.
Option.
So much hate.
A lot of people would like to do that. That's not an option.
But the cost that you saw for Stafford and the rumored cost of what they're trying to get for Carson Wentz and, other picks that's going on, I would rather take the cost and the capital trade up to get a guy for 10 years versus what unknown I'm going to dip into. Hell, I might rather sign Ryan Fitzpatrick for a year who can push the ball down the field more than Carson Wentz.
I don't know. I still, as an Eagles fan, I still think that Wentz got a little bit of a raw deal the past year or two, because that team was so bad. They haven't had a good receiver. I don't think he's gotten a fair shake, to be honest with you. Still, because I mean, and maybe that injury really took him out. But he was going to be MVP in 2018. Like he was almost deadlocked in. They were the best team in the league, or one of the best teams in the league, before he decided to do too much. And then after that, it's like he has Dan coined the PMS, the Patrick Mahomes syndrome, where he just tried to do too much. And I think he used to be able to do that, and I still think he can do that some of the time, but he didn't have weapons around him to get free and to really help him out. I mean, Alshon Jeffrey once he was basically his savior, and Ertz as well, and they just got too old and they just weren't what they used to be. So I still think Wentz has an opportunity when he goes to the Colts. Or the Bears.
I tend to actually agree with Trev. I think there's something else going on there. I said this on the last podcast where, is he a bit of a diva based? Maybe. I think there clearly was a bad relationship brewing between him and Pedersen or something.
And it's been bad for a couple of years too.
They have no talent. They've missed on draft picks. The Alshon Jeffrey thing is well documented. I would still want him, depending on the price, which I agree with you, Ross, depending on the price. Stafford at this point would still garner more than Wentz, bar none. So it's not going to be the Stafford price. It should be under that. If it's above the Stafford price, I agree with you. If it's under the Stafford price, I would still want him. He's young. He's got, if you can get back to where he was, he's a franchise quarterback. So I still would want to take that risk. I don't think I would look at that as a huge negative, depending on the price.
Yeah. I'd rather have Darnold over Wentz.
Yeah, no, I would not.
I think they're both projects. I think.
Yeah, but Wentz had 2 good years. Sam Darnold has had 0 good years.
Why had a half of a good year? He had a half of a good year. If you piece all of his good games together, it's probably about 8 games.
I'm just saying,
that might be stretching it.
At least with Wentz, you can try to just get back to where he was. Darnold, you're trying to get to some place he's never been. I don't like that. Yeah.
And the problem too is that if Wentz does miss and he is just garbage, his contract is brutal. So you're paying a ton of money for him.
Can I bring something up too, which I noticed this year, which has nothing to do with it, just a quick observation? Because of Wentz, we talked about Wentz, we talked about Mahomes' injury, Dane brought up Dak's injury. When are we going to stop running with our franchises? When are we going to tell these quarterbacks, stop running the ball, stop designing plays that get these guys hurt? I don't get it.
The problem
I don't get it.
The evolution has been every quarterback needs to be able to scramble well and make
I disagree
play action throws.
I totally disagree, Jim. And usually I agree with you on stuff. I agree. The evolution of scrambling and moving around the pocket and getting out of the pocket and sliding a la Russell Wilson, yes. Designed runs that get your quarterback hurt? No. Patrick Mahomes was a designed option play that he got knocked out. Wentz was a designed run, quarterback sneak, and Dak was a designed draw. Don't run. If they have to scramble, I agree with you. Don't design plays that can get them hurt. It's insane.
And that's why
You're trying to minimize the amount of hits. Isn't that the whole thing we say with running backs? Cut down the amount of wear on the tires.
Every hit you take.
Why do you think Tom Brady is playing when he's 43? Because he takes less hits than any quarterback I have ever seen, so he can keep playing. Meanwhile, those guys are getting hurt because they're running the ball. How's Cam Newton's career? How's it going? Robert Griffin III, how's that doing?
I was just about to say, like, look
how
at
are those careers going?
Cam Newton went from being Hall of Fame bound to pretty much being nothing. He destroyed his career because they just all those design runs, like you were saying, like quarterback is the most important position in all of professional sports. Do not run him into a brick wall. It's just
Thank you.
Why would you do that? I completely agree with that. Like, it's crazy to think that, you're paying this guy all this money, you can't win without him, and you're going to roll him out into a linebacker. He's going to get killed. Like, okay, cool. Yeah, let's take my $400 million investment in Patrick Mahomes and let's make him run out wide into Devin White. Like, okay, that's a great plan. Like, are you trying to get fired?
Like, if he has to scramble, I agree with you, Jim. Like, if it's a scramble-based offense, I want my quarterback to have that option. I also want him to slide before he gets hit. When I'm designing runs for those players, I think that's a bad idea. Your offense has got to be able to function without that. I just don't think it's worth the risk. Even if it's like a 1% chance, the Cowboy season ended this year with an injury to their quarterback. Wentz's career might have ended with an injury. And you're looking now at Patrick Mahomes, who potentially lost the Super Bowl because of injury history. So it's just one of those things where I'm like, I don't get this. I don't get running your quarterback on design runs. I just think it's a bad idea.
I do agree that you should protect the quarterbacks and that we shouldn't be trying to put them in harm's way. I just see the evolution of where it has been going. Whether I choose to agree
I know.
it's the right thing to do is they're trying to make the quarterbacks do more than what just standing in the pocket and deliver and throw.
Agree. And I think this is a further problem with the whole idea that we're protecting quarterbacks so much is I think you see smart quarterback, and I'm not saying they're not smart, but I think you see some smart quarterbacks that pocket passers, Aaron Rodgers, Drew Brees, Tom Brady, who sit in the pocket, do what they do, take minimum amount of hits, even Russell Wilson, those guys can play to their 40. The problem is they're protecting them so much that now coaches and running quarterbacks are going, well, they're protecting me so much, I can do more running the ball. It's like, yeah, but all it takes is one hit from these defensive players to change the whole trajectory of your career.
Yeah, it's a good point. But if those coaches, if those GMs just end up paying those players before they get injured, it probably never would have happened.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, like, it's also just one of those things where I don't like Andy Reid. I thought it was funny. So he ran that same play that he got knocked out on. He ran that same play early in the Super Bowl. Patrick Mahomes pitched the ball on that option so fast. It was hilarious. They were not out of the backfield, and he pitched that ball. I was like, that play is adjusted. That play should have never been in the playbook. I was like, but at least it got adjusted.
And don't forget, that's why teams are also investing in running quarterbacks to run specific plays. That's why Taysom Hill got paid. That's why that's why the Eagles drafted Jalen Hurts. So I think the evolution is that they're going to end up having these second quarterbacks that do jump in for a couple plays.
I also believe you don't want to be on the wrong side of escalation, like the whole concept of escalation where there's that famous where Commissioner Gordon in the Batman movie is like, we buy guns, we bring knives, they buy guns. We get guns, they get body armor. We get armor-piercing bullets, they buy rocket-propelled grenades. You talk about Devin White, who is a linebacker, a freakish linebacker, who can fly around the field and cut you off because he's faster than your quarterback.
4.42, I think is what they say.
You might be a running quarterback. He is faster than you, and he's bigger and stronger. Don't try to outrun him.
Or just put him at quarterback.
Oh, there you go.
Well, how about if you want to go to another thing, look at the running quarterback. Kyler Murray, arguably by week 10, was in the conversation for MVP. He tweaked something in his leg, and it took out that entire offense. I mean, they missed the playoffs because of it. I mean, he played through it, but you could tell Kyler Murray was not the same. And Kyler Murray's not a big guy, and to the point, like, why do you want to run 10 option plays with a guy who's 5 foot? He's 5'9" and 180 pounds. Like, and you're running into elite level NFL talent on the other side of the ball, and these guys are 260, and they can run just as fast as Kyler Murray can, and it's just I don't want that matchup. And to actually like design plays to that, like you're playing with fire, and eventually it's it's going to catch up to Lamar Jackson too. I mean, I don't care what anyone says. Lamar Jackson's going to get hit, and he's not going to get up one day because he's going to run into the wrong dude. And it's
ticking.
So, And here, let's talk about Russell Wilson for a moment, right? This 2021 draft, the Seahawks have 3 picks total: a second-round pick, a fourth-round pick, and a fifth-round pick. Their best offensive lineman turns 36 in August. That's on that team. They traded their 2020 second first to the Jets. Tyler Lockett's a free agent in 2022. The GM and head coach are under contract until 2026 and 2027. Russell Wilson is the only thing holding that team together. And I can understand, you're hearing Russell say, I'm tired of being hit. And here we are. There's all these now reports flying out about Russell Wilson all of a sudden. There's a lot of stuff that's built into all this, especially now even Deshaun Watson, as we all know, been documented over the last couple months.
I don't think Russell Wilson leaves the Seahawks and plays for another team, but honestly, he's talked about it. I don't know if anyone knows this. The New York Yankees own the rights to Russell Wilson, and a big thing with Russell Wilson was when he was in college, he was both a great baseball and football player. He actually left North Carolina State because North Carolina State said, hey, here's an ultimatum. You can play one, but you can't play both. And he said, well, I'll just leave. And that's how he ended up in Wisconsin, because Wisconsin said, yeah, sure, dude, you can play whatever you want. We don't care. We want your talent on football, but we'll also let you play baseball too. So he basically went from North Carolina State to Wisconsin because he loved baseball so much. He was drafted by the Texas Rangers, and I think right now the New York Yankees actually hold his rights, and he's talked openly about one day, before, the wheels completely fall off, that I would like to go play. Yeah, he's been to spring training. He wants to go play baseball. So, I can see a scenario where it gets so bad in Seattle, he just says, F it, I'm out. I'm not going to get killed, and I'm going to go play baseball for a
take a big money contract from the Yankees.
Here's the thing. I understand what you guys are saying, and I totally agree with both the points. I think they're both valid points. The Deshaun Watson thing is what I like the most. When you say Deshaun Watson, this is what's happening with the Deshaun Watson situation. The reason the Deshaun Watson situation is happening is because he voiced displeasure, and they went, yeah, we don't care. Shut up. Go play. You want to be in on the GM choice? No. You want to be in on the coaching choice? No. Your best players, DeAndre Hopkins? We don't care. Gone. The difference is that Russell will voice his displeasure, which he did. They will adjust accordingly. They will abide by their franchise.
Well, Russ also has options. And, Deshaun Watson doesn't have another option. He's not going to go play baseball where, I could see Kyler Murray one day saying, you know what? I was the number 9 overall pick in the Major League Draft. Maybe I don't want to get hit anymore. Maybe I'll go play for the A's.
And they knew he probably wasn't going to play baseball. They still took him 9th overall.
They knew he was going to go number 1 overall, and they said, you know what, this kid is so good, we're going to take him, and maybe one day he comes and plays for us when he's 32. When he just says, you know what, I don't want to get hit anymore.
And baseball players make a lot
I understand you could
of
get there
money.
eventually.
And it's guaranteed.
I think they will. I think they will listen to what he has to say and adjust accordingly. That's what they've done. When he said he didn't have any weapons, they went and got DK Metcalf. They went and got more receiver. So they will acknowledge it. The problem with the Deshaun Watson thing is that they heard the complaints and they heard him voicing his displeasure, and they went, we don't care.
They also fired the coach and the GM.
He's like, all right, then peace, I'm gone. So there is a difference there, although it's similar displeasure. I think the Seahawks will adjust accordingly. It'll be hard with the draft picks they have and with some of the bad trades, but I think they'll concentrate. They'll watch their defense next year will be straight horseshit, but their offensive line will be better. They will take those 3 draft picks and they will draft 3 offensive linemen and trade for offensive linemen. Chance Warmack just got cut. They'll sign him, or they cut him, so maybe not.
This brings up a good point. We need to start another league, but it'll be a combo football-baseball league. Russell Wilson, Kyler Murray, first pick, second pick overall in those leagues.
I like it. These leagues won't exist. There is no longer a thing that is the dual sport athlete.
Dane and I we're in a Dynasty baseball league together. And I believe we are also champions in that league as well. Except we didn't play this year.
You know what? Obviously, I get Fernando Tatis Jr. off the waiver wire, and I get to keep him forever. And then the commissioner just randomly goes, "Oh, we're not playing now," and I'm like, "Oh yeah, of course."
I still remember when you made it a trade, and it was like 3 of the top players at the time, and you picked up a bunch of like young players, and people freaked out. And in your typical Dane defend myself style, you're like, "You guys are idiots! You're so stupid! You have no idea what you're talking about!" And they're like, "No, you're dumb." And then literally 2 years later, Dane's like, "Well, I'm champion, so here I am."
The trick is in baseball, you can't find hitting on the waivers unless you literally like pick a guy up who's a rookie who hasn't played yet, and you cross your fingers. And it happened.
Cody Bellinger.
It happened with Bellinger. It happened with Fernando Tatis Jr. So like I was desperate. I could not find a third baseman, and I traded Chris Sale and Jacob deGrom for Nolan Arenado, and everyone was just like, "That's such a bad trade. You're trading the number 1 and number 2." And I said, "Look, I can go and find stats. Like, I can go find a guy who can get me 10 strikeouts. I don't need the pitching. I need the hitting." Like, I was getting killed every week in hitting stats. I get Nolan Arenado. What do you know? My hitting stats go up. I win the league.
Yeah.
And everyone
pitchers
like,
fall off that cliff once they can't throw 90 miles an hour anymore.
And then, like, of course, the 2 guys that, like, basically, like, went at me for 2 solid years about, like, I'm such an idiot. Why would you trade 2 pitchers for one position player? Well, you know what? The position player plays every day. The pitchers play once every 5 days. And I won the championship. And then those guys, like, instead of saying like, "Oh," they just up and left. They were they were so dejected. They were just like, "I guess I'll just leave."
I think we might be the only champions of that league, because I think me and Betancourt won 2 years, and I think you won the next, and then I think it just ceased to exist.
Yeah, I finally fixed my offense, and then they were just like, "Yeah, we're not playing anymore." And I was like, "Okay, cool, thanks. I'm glad you took my money for all those years. I win and finally actually like build my team the way I wanted it." And then all of a sudden, it's just like, yeah.
Have to get another football league together.
Well, Dane, thanks for coming on and joining us. If there's one thing you want to say to shit on us, feel free to bring it up now. Maybe, like how somebody wastes a pick of Derrick Henry, trades him away for a 111 or something.
I don't want to talk shit. I actually want to say something amazing. This is the first Super Bowl where I've actually openly cheered for Tom Brady. Like, and this is the first. You're hearing this first. I haven't said this to anyone yet. I thought about this. So I'm watching the game and I'm openly cheering for Tom Brady, and I'm just like, there's something really wrong with this scenario, but I'll tell you why I do it. I hate more than anything when you turn on ESPN or you turn on any talk show and they want to talk about the GOAT debate, and it's always Jordan versus LeBron. Now, I'm a believer that no one will ever beat Jordan, but LeBron just keeps adding to his stats, and eventually he's probably going to get there. So you're going to have this debate. And I hate that, because to me, no one will ever be Michael Jordan. Tom Brady on Sunday night shut the door on any scenario where you could ever say that anyone is ever going to be better than him. Tom Brady is number 1. He has more Super Bowls than every other franchise does. Let that sink in. He has 7. Patrick Mahomes is going to be lucky to get 3 or 4. It's hard to win Super Bowls. And even if Mahomes gets there, Tom Brady is 2-0 against you in the playoffs, bud. He beat you when it mattered. He beat you when he was in his 40s. You were a young lad. You were in the prime of your career, and this old man comes out and just kicks the piss out of you. Tom Brady shut the door. Thank God. I never have to explain it to anyone else. It's Tom Brady and everyone else. And you know what? I'm actually fine with that. I'm fine with having a GOAT and saying, that guy's the best ever. Don't argue with it. Because I hate every day that, you watch the FS1, Skip and Shannon, or you watch First Take, and they're always just like, who's better, Jordan or LeBron? And it's just annoying to have to go through that, because one guy, I think it's Michael Jordan, and I don't think it's close. But, LeBron James is close enough where you can have a discussion. Football, there's no discussion. And I thank God, Brady took that discussion outside, beat it over the head, dug a hole, and threw it in there, and it's dead. It's dead and buried. Tom Brady's the king. All hail the king. I can't believe I'm saying this. I actually enjoyed it, because it takes a headache away. Like I feel like a weight is lifted. Like I know who the king is of football. It's Tom Brady. I'm sorry. It doesn't matter what happened. You can say he cheated. You could say he's a system quarterback. Guess what? No one will ever touch 7 Super Bowls. Like it's not going to happen. It's Tom Brady. End of discussion. We can all move on with our lives. Thank God. It's like a moment of clarity.
I think it's nice too that like it can put an end to, people wanted to talk about Belichick Brady. Like I think this accented that Brady had a lot more to do, or he had more to do with it. Belichick is obviously very important. Don't get me wrong, but Brady's leadership is
closure
is huge.
It's closure, and like I hate Tom Brady, but he provided me with closure. Like it's over and it's done with. It's Brady. It's no one else. You have to tip your hat to it eventually.
So,
we all agree.
Who is number 2? That's the new debate. Who's number 2?
But at least number 2. Yeah. Well, I mean, you're not sitting there and saying like this guy's the greatest. This guy's the greatest. I mean, you're all. Who cares who's second place? It's Brady. Like, who cares? Tom Brady's the best, and everyone else is like, whatever. Who cares? Marino might have been the most talented, never had the team around him. And, a lot of people say Elway, a lot of people say Joe Montana, but, like, who cares? Elway and Montana have less Super Bowls combined than Tom Brady. Tom Brady wins. It's over. It's done with. We can all go outside and enjoy our life knowing that Tom Brady just he won. He won. It's over. It's done with. I know, like, it's a hard pill to swallow.
Does Mahomes win his next Super Bowl in like another 7 years after Brady retires?
Brady retires when he's 50.
I think Josh Allen wins the Super Bowl before Mahomes does.
Before Allen gets there. Look at this Josh Allen fan. He's already turned the corner.
I've seen a lot of people actually say that they think Buffalo is the team that's going to win it next year. That a lot of teams don't think that either team, either Tampa or Kansas City is going to make it back. I honestly, why would Tampa Bay not make it back?
Brady gets injured.
Hasn't happened yet.
But
why wouldn't Kansas City make it back either?
Yeah,
I would bet against Tampa Bay going.
Josh Allen and the Bills.
They beat him in the playoffs this year. It was a massacre.
It's crazy to think. I mean, if you're going to get that defensive output again with the Cleveland Browns, I could see Cleveland. Like if Odell Beckham comes back and Odell Beckham is the old Odell Beckham, I can see the Browns beating the Chiefs. I mean, the game was a lot closer than a lot of people expected. Because the Browns can run the ball down your throat and they can get pressure with 4 guys because Myles Garrett is just a man. Like he's just a man.
Yeah. And Mahomes getting exposed in the Super Bowl kind of opens it. This is the first game he's lost by double. This is the stat that killed me. This is the first game he's lost by double digits since college.
That's is being so reactionary, though. That you're saying he got exposed. He hasn't been exposed in 3 years, and he lost 1 game, and he's now exposed to everybody else.
I mean, what? I don't know. What do you think happened in that game?
They played terrible. They had multiple injuries on the offensive line side of the ball, and that defense played out of their minds. Remember when the multiple teams have won Super Bowls on all-time great defensive performances? Most of them did not win a second Super Bowl. So I'm not saying it's off the reservation, but to act like the sun has set and that that Patrick Mahomes is now exposed, that seems insanely reactionary to me is all.
It shows the chink in the armor, I think, is the thing.
I don't think he's exposed as much as it's just hard to win. Like, I mean, if you look at that team, they're loaded everywhere, but look at Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers, after he won his first Super Bowl, you thought the sky was the limit. You thought Peyton Manning would win more. You thought, I mean, at 27 years old, Big Ben had 2 Super Bowls. If you thought that he could win more, and the Steelers basically have not even been back, not even been close.
Yeah,
I mean, they've gotten. I mean, they have gotten close, but they get to the championship game and they just get slaughtered by the Patriots or whoever they're playing. It's hard to win. And
I think you're right, Dane. I do think the rate at which Tom Brady has, and Treb said this last week, the rate at which he's gotten to AFC Championship games and NFC Championships, and the rate that he has won Super Bowls has skewed everybody's belief on, oh, Patrick Mahomes should win 3 or 4. It's like, no. This is hard to do. Just because he's doing it 7 times does not mean that this is not incredibly difficult to do twice. It's so hard to do once, let alone twice.
Well, what is it? It's 7 wins, 10 trips to the Super Bowl, and I think 15 title games.
Yeah.
Like,
Something
you look
like
at that,
yeah.
and you're right. I think people look at that and go, well, if Tom Brady can do it, this guy can do it because he's more talented than Tom Brady. Talent does not. That's not it. Like, you could be the most talented quarterback I've ever seen in my life is Dan Marino. You have to have the team around you, and you have to play smart.
Yeah.
And Tom Brady, like, he doesn't screw up. He really doesn't. Yeah. I mean, we talked about this earlier in the podcast. Like, the Chiefs, their game plan was screwed up. If Tom Brady, if the game's screwed up, he'll pull everyone aside. He'll make an adjustment, and they win. They came back and beat the Falcons when they were down 28-3. You thought he was dead in the water. They make a few adjustments. They win the game. That's what he does. Like, Tom Brady is like the ultimate tactician. He is like Batman. Like, Batman has no superpowers. Batman should not be able to beat Superman, but Batman finds a way. Tom Brady is Batman. He finds a way to beat you. It's not pretty sometimes, but it doesn't matter. He gets the job done. He's a 6th-round pick who looked like a scrawny kid coming out of college. He ran a 12.5 40 or whatever the hell it was. Like, it was terrible, but he finds a way to win. And he doesn't have a superpower. He doesn't have a rocket arm like Patrick Mahomes. He can't be lying almost on his back sideways and chuck the ball 75 yards down the field and then have it clank off Tyreek Hill's face,
that was insane.
That was insane. Tom Brady will never do that. But you know what? Tom Brady will win, and that's all that matters. Because he just finds he's Batman. He has no superpowers, but he will beat you. And at the end of the day, you're like, how the hell do you do that? It's because he's freaking Batman. Like, he exposes your weakness.
And I think this year was the absolute best showing that Brady could have had. He had to beat the best quarterbacks to get there. He beat Mahomes, he beat Aaron Rodgers, he beat Drew Brees, and he beat Taylor Heineke. I mean, can you name 4 more prolific?
But I'm not.
Can you say 4 more prolific quarterbacks? I don't think so.
The only run that even
was in their prime.
The only run that ever comes close to what Tom Brady did is when Drew Brees won, and Drew Brees went through Brett Favre, Kurt Warner. He went through Favre, Kurt Warner, and then Peyton Manning. That's the only time that I can think a quarterback had as hard as a deal as Tom Brady did. But I think what Brady did is actually better than Brees because, you went through who everyone thinks is the best quarterback, since,
Sam Brady.
Since everyone thinks Patrick Mahomes is like the greatest thing ever now. And then you went through the NFL MVP, who, by the way, only had 50 touchdowns and 2 interceptions. Like, you went to Lambeau Field where you're not supposed to beat the Green Bay Packers, and you beat Aaron Rodgers. You beat Drew Brees, who they said there's no way in hell Drew Brees is losing this game. It's his swan song. He's going out. He's going to beat Tom Brady, and that's going to be the end of Tom Brady. Like, no, he ended. He said, "Hey, Drew Brees, guess what? You get to retire, buddy. I'm not just knocking you out of the game. I'm taking your legs out. Like, I'm gonna show you that you need to go."
And taking his record next year too.
Yeah, and taking his records next year. Like, he didn't just take him out. Like, it's like a mob hit. Like, he's taken out his whole family. And then he went to Lambeau Field and he embarrassed Aaron Rodgers, who's a fraud at this point. And then he went and he said, "Oh, you think you're the best? You think you're going to be the next great thing? Guess what? I'm going to beat you when you're 26 years old and I'm 100." And what he did is amazing.
We're in complete agreement. This is amazing, Dane.
It sickens me to my core, but I have to give the guy props that
we're not in complete agreement. I agree with a lot of it, but I also disagree with a lot of it. So
Dan
I just don't have time to get into it.
Dan completely agrees.
I don't.
I'm just pushing. But no, so we're gonna wrap this up. Dane, thank you so much for coming on. We're excited that everybody's going to start coming on and doing this with us. You can get a little more exposure of the league communicating. And
Jim, I disagreed with a lot of it, but I had to make sure the echo chamber continued, so I just nodded and said yes.
There you go.
What was the name of the podcast? We are the Groupthink Echo Chamber podcast. Is that what was that? I can't remember.
Press.
It was good. It was good. We enjoyed it. And so, but what we're gonna do? We're gonna figure out who the next guest will be on. And also, we do need to start pushing out some of the bylaws to speed up things. We're not trying to change too much or anything of the sort. Everybody, feel free to communicate about what you like, what you don't like, how much of an asshole I am. It doesn't matter. Just be vocal about whatever you want. And we want to make sure that we make it happen. Oh, Dan, unreal. You're putting me up there with Brady. That's great.
It's close now. It's close. It's close.
No, but we'll post something shortly. And thank you again, Dane. Thank you.
Dane, thanks for coming on, man. Come back,
My
man.
pleasure.
Thank you, brother.
Yeah.